1,000 years ago, London was a wooden town you could walk across in 20 minutes. 10,000 people, give or take, crammed behind a crumbling Roman wall. And yet, in a single century, this small, muddy, flammable place would be besieged by Vikings, sold out by its own king, conquered by Normans, and still come out of it as the most important city in England. For centuries, all we've had to picture it are chronicle entries, archaeology, and a few inches of embroidered cloth. But now, using advanced AI techniques, we can now reconstruct London in the 11th century and what life was actually like there. Walk the streets of London as they looked in the year 1000. So stay until the end, because the London you're about to see has a wooden bridge that gets pulled down by an army, a church that changes English history, and a stone tower built specifically to frighten the people living in its shadow. Let's go back to year 1000. So how do you get to London in the year 1000? The same way almost everyone does. You sail up the Thames. The river is wider and slower than today, spilling into marshes on the southern bank. Ahead of you, a line of grey stone rises out of the mud, the Roman Wall. It's already 700 years old, patched and repaired, but still standing, 20 feet high in places, wrapping around a single square mile. The Romans built it, abandoned it, and for centuries the city inside sat almost empty, while the Saxons traded from a settlement further west called Lundenburg, roughly where Covent Garden is now. Then the Vikings came, and everything moved. King Alfred took the old walled city back in 886, repaired the defences, and moved everyone inside. The open trading town was abandoned. People started calling it the Old Wick, the Old Market, and the name stuck. We still call that area Aldwych today. So London of the year 1000 is Alfred's city, grown up rapidly. Your boat passes fishing weirs, and then the wooden bridge, London Bridge, rebuilt in timber roughly where the Romans had their bridge. Boats gathered at the shore at Billingsgate and at Queenhithe, unloading wool, fish, timber, and wine from Rouen. Merchants from France, Belgium, and Germany land here and pay their tolls. London grows around the Thames and becomes an international trading hub. Step through the gates, and the first thing that hits you is the smell. Wood smoke, animal dung, fish, tanning leather. There are no sewers. Waste goes into pits, or the street, or onto the river. The Walbrook runs right through the middle of town, and it is serving the purpose of a drain. The streets are narrow and surfaced with gravel or timber, and the houses are wood. Wattle walls packed with mud and straw, thatched roofs, one-room houses, dirt floors. Archaeologists have dug up dozens of them. Behind each house there's usually a small yard with a garden, some pigs, maybe chickens. Cheapside is the main market street. Cheap is simply the Old English word for market. And on market days it's packed with stalls selling everything from eels to knives to imported silk. Above the rooftops, one building dominates, St. Paul's up on the Western Hill. A cathedral has stood there since 604, and beside it is an open-air meeting ground where the folkmoot gathers. But be honest about what life here costs. Half the children born in this city won't see adulthood. Disease moves fast through crowded houses with no clean water. Fire is so common here. And slavery is legal. Roughly 1 in 10 people in England at this time is enslaved, bought and sold like livestock. This is a harsh world, and Londoners survive it by being tough, practical, and stubborn. Out on the North Sea, the dragon ships are back. England's King Ethelred. History remembers him as the Unready, which actually meant ill-advised, and he earns it. His answer to Viking raids is to pay them to go away. It doesn't work. They keep coming back for more. In 1002, he orders a massacre of Danes living in England. And among the dead, it's said, is the sister of the King of Denmark, Sweyn Forkbeard. Sweyn takes it personally. For the next decade, Viking armies burn their way across England. And again, they throw themselves at London. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle records attack after attack and being beaten every time. While the rest of the country pays and burns, London holds and moves on. Until 1013, that year Sweyn brings a full invasion. The whole country collapses, and London, last of all, with its king fleeing abroad. Sweyn dies just weeks into his reign, and Ethelred comes back with an ally, a Norwegian named Olaf. According to the Norse sagas, Olaf's ships row up to London Bridge, tie ropes to its timber piles, and pull the entire bridge down into the Thames. Historians still argue over whether that is true, but many believe it lives on in a song every child knows. The war ends in 1016. Ethelred dies inside the city. His son Edmund Ironside fights the Danish prince Cnut to a bloody standstill, then dies within months. And Cnut chooses to be crowned right here, in the city that fought him hardest. Here's the twist. The Viking king turns out to be good for business. Cnut rules England, Denmark and Norway all at once, and London sits in the middle of that empire. Danish merchants settle in. The docks get busier. The mint works overtime. London coins from this period turn up as far away as Scandinavia and beyond. By mid-century, the population is climbing towards 15, maybe 20,000, making it easily the largest city in England. When the Danish line dies out, the crown passes back to Ethelred's son, Edward, called the Confessor. Edward is pious, half Norman by upbringing, and he pours his energy into one great project, a vast stone abbey on Thorney Island, a marshy spot 2 miles upstream from the city. People call it the Westminster to distinguish it from St. Paul's in the east. Westminster Abbey is opened on December 28, 1065. Edward is too sick to attend the ceremony. 8 days later, he's dead, buried in the church he built. And because he leaves no children, 3 men now believe they should be King of England. You know where this is going. English nobleman Harold Godwinson is crowned first in the new abbey. That autumn, he marches north and destroys a Norwegian invasion by Harold Hardrada, then turns around and force marches his exhausted army south because Duke William of Normandy has landed on the coast. Harold Godwinson dies on the battlefield at Hastings in October 1066. But here's what most people miss. Hastings doesn't end it. London does. William knows he isn't king until this city says so. He tries the direct approach at the bridge and is beaten back. So he swings in a great loop around the city, burning as he goes, cutting London off. Facing that, the leading men of the city come out and authorize. William is crowned at Westminster Abbey on Christmas Day 1066. And when the crowd inside roars its approval, his guards outside mistake the noise for a riot and start setting fire to nearby houses. William confirms the Londoners' old laws in a charter. You can still see it today. But he also plants a fortress in the city's southeast corner. It grows into a massive stone keep, gleaming white, visible from everywhere. The White Tower, the beginning of the Tower of London. By the 1080s, London is divided by 2, Norman lords in stone and English citizens in timber, grumbling at each other in different languages. In 1087, a great fire tears through the streets and Old St. Paul's completely burns. The rebuilding starts almost immediately, in stone, bigger than before. That's the pattern this city has already learned. Burn, rebuild, grow, and repeat it for the next 1,000 years. So that was London in the 11th century. A small wooden town that outlasted Viking sieges, crowned kings from 3 different nations, and ended the century with a stone tower watching over it. The people who lived through it were ordinary, traders, fishwives, boatmen, and they held one of the most contested places in Europe through its hardest 100 years. If you enjoyed walking those streets, a like helps more people find the video, and subscribe, because next time we're bringing another lost century back to life. Which city and which century should we bring back to life next? Tell us in the comments.